There is a strange kind of silence that falls just before death, a silence heavy with regret. A stillness filled with all the words never said, all the moments never lived. Elara lay on her deathbed. Her once bright eyes dulled, her lips cracked, her breath shallow. Around her, the great stone walls of the royal chamber echoed with cold indifference. No one wept, not even him. Kale, the man she had given everything to, her hand, her loyalty, her heart, stood at the foot of her bed, looking not at her, but past her, as if waiting for her to finally be gone. She was not a queen, only his wife in name, a pawn in a greater game, used, discarded, forgotten. Her fingers trembled on the silken sheets, not from pain she had long grown numb to the, but from one final wish. If I could do it all again, she whispered, voice barely a breath, I would never choose you. A single tear rolled down her cheek, and then stillness. But death, it seemed, had a different plan. A sudden gasp, air filled her lungs like fire. She sat up, coughing, choking, eyes wide, heart pounding. It wasn't pain that met her but sunlight. Warm, gentle, unfamiliar. She blinked. The room was not the cold palace chamber but her childhood bedroom. The scent of lavender and ink, the old oak bookshelf, the faded curtains fluttering in the breeze. Her hand flew to her chest, young, unscarred, her skin smooth once more, her hair thick and long again, and on her bedside table a folded letter she remembered writing when she was 16. She had been reborn into her past, her second chance. In that moment, Elara didn't laugh. She didn't scream. She only sat there, eyes burning with the fire of everything she had learned in her first life. She would not waste this life. She would not marry him. She would not walk quietly into ruin. This time, she would choose herself. Morning bells rang across the Dverin estate. Servants moved in a blur of soft footsteps and whispered duties. Elara, a familiar voice called outside the door. It was Rowan. Rowan Ilian, her childhood friend. Stable boy turned knight in training. Always gentle, always quiet, always there. She had barely seen him in her last life. She had brushed him off because he wasn't noble enough, because he didn't shine like Hale. But now his voice stirred something warm, something real. She rushed to the door, flinging it open. He froze, startled by the sudden movement. Elara, he asked again, confused, eyes searching hers. You're crying? She was, not because she was sad, but because, in that moment, she remembered what it was like to forget him, and she never wanted to make that mistake again. I'm fine, she whispered, then caught herself. No, she wouldn't lie anymore. I'm not fine, Rowan, she said softly, but I will be. And for the first time since waking in this new old life, she smiled. Later that day, her father summoned her. The tall, steely Duke Dverin rarely smiled, but today, there was pride in his eyes. The engagement is confirmed, he said, placing the royal crest on her lap. Prince Kale will be your husband. Her hands curled into fists. The name hit her like ice. Kale, the crown prince. Cold, calculating. Her future executioner. She looked up slowly. Her voice was calm, but her heart thundered in her chest. I won't marry him. The room fell into silence. A silence more dangerous than thunder. Her father's lips parted slightly. What did you say? I said, she repeated, eyes clear. I refuse this engagement. It was the first time in her life both lives that she had ever stood against him. The Duke slammed his palm against the table. Do you understand what you're refusing? The crown, Elara. The future queen's throne. I understand, she said simply. I remember everything. She rose from her seat and walked out, leaving the royal crest lying cold on the velvet cushion. Behind her, the sound of crashing porcelain, but she didn't flinch. That night, she sat under the stars in the old garden, and she wasn't alone. Rowan found her there like he always used to. He didn't speak at first. He just sat beside her, giving her space. And somehow, that meant more than any words. Then softly, "You really told your father no?" She nodded, and the prince, "I'm done letting others decide what I'm worth," she said. "Kale never loved me. He never even saw me. But you always did, didn't you?" His silence was answer enough. "Why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Why did you always look at me like I was someone worth fighting for?" Rowan turned to her slowly, and for the first time, she noticed the way his eyes, deep brown, quiet and warm, held pain. "Because," he said, "you were always worth it, even when you didn't see it yourself." And just like that, her heart shifted. It didn't fall like it once had, recklessly, painfully. This time, it leaned. It unfolded, gently, like petals toward the sun. Elara woke before the sun, before the servants, before the world had fully stirred. She stood before the mirror, staring at the girl she once was, young, unbroken, but burdened with the memory of a life that had already passed. This time, she would not wait for life to decide for her. She dressed simply, no jewels, no silk. Just a light blue day gown, and her hair tied back, the way she used to before court demanded she be something she wasn't. And she walked outside to the stables. Rowan was there, already tending the horses. He always rose early, always put duty before comfort. He didn't notice her at first until he turned and saw her leaning quietly against the doorframe. "You're up early," he said with a small smile, brushing hay from his sleeves. "I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." He nodded. "Want to ride?" "Might help." She did. They rode down the valley path, the one that wound through the morning fog and flower fields, where the air smelled like wild mint and freedom. For a time, they said nothing, just let the rhythm of hooves and breeze carry the silence. Finally, she spoke. "I used to think power meant having a crown, controlling others. But now I wonder if real power is just the ability to choose your own path." Rowan glanced at her, his smile touched with something deeper. "It is. And you're choosing it now. That's brave." Elara looked out at the horizon. "It doesn't feel brave. It feels terrifying." "Maybe it's both." They returned to the manor by midday. The tension in the estate had changed. Whispers moved through the halls like smoke. Servants avoided her eyes. Her father hadn't spoken to her since her refusal. Then, just after the noon meal, a letter arrived. The raw seal pressed into the wax like a threat. Elara read the name, Kale Oren. She opened it slowly. "Lady Elara, your actions have caused a stir. You've embarrassed your house and insulted the crown. But I am curious what has changed in you so completely. I thought you understood the cost of rebellion. If not, allow me to remind you in person." Kale, Crown Prince of Valmareshi, let the letter fall to her lap. He was coming. Kale was not a man who let his pride bruise easily. In her past life, his cruelty had been precise, cold smiles, veiled threats, subtle punishments, all delivered with the grace of a man who knew exactly how much power he held. She had once thought herself special for having caught his eye. Now, she knew better. Later that evening, Rowan found her in the reading room, hands curled around a teacup she hadn't touched. "You're pale," he said, sitting opposite her. "Did something happen?" She passed him the letter. He read it, his jaw tightening. He's coming here. She nodded. I don't like this, he said. If he thinks he's been slighted, he will retaliate. Then leave. Rowan said, quietly but firmly. Leave with me. Now. Before he arrives. Elara looked at him, surprised. Run? I'm not asking you to run, he said. I'm offering you a choice. You said that's what you want. A life that's yours. Her heart pounded. But she shook her head. Not yet. If I run now, he'll come after us with twice the fury. I need to face him. Show him I'm not the girl he controlled. You're not alone this time, Rowan said. Just remember that night, as the moon rose silver over the estate, Elara sat in her window seat, watching shadows shift. In the garden below, she remembered Keel's touch, elegant but distant. His praise, always calculated. The way he made her feel like a porcelain doll in a glass cage. She remembered the loneliness, the bitter ache of loving someone who never really saw her. And then, she remembered Rowan's voice. The quiet, steady way he had always spoken to her. Like she mattered. Like she was more than a title. Tomorrow, Kale would arrive. But this time, she wouldn't be his to command. She would meet him not as a timid bride, but as a woman who had died once and would not die again. The sound of hooves thundered across the Dvarin courtyard before the sun had fully risen. Elara stood on the balcony, wrapped in a shawl, watching as the royal carriage came into view. 6 white horses, 4 armored guards, 1 shadow that haunted her from another life. The moment had come. Prince Kale Oren had arrived. He stepped out in regal silence, tall, dressed in obsidian, robes lined with silver trim, his blonde hair immaculately tied back. His face, a sculpture carved in winter, cold, controlled, beautiful in the way that marble is beautiful, lifeless, untouchable. He didn't smile when he saw her. He didn't bow. He only looked up, straight into her eyes, and for a moment time stalled. But this time, Elara did not flinch. They met in the formal receiving hall. She descended the steps in a modest dress, refusing the crimson gown her maids had laid out. No royal colors, no pretenses. She would not dress like a bride. Kale turned slowly. As she approached Elara, he said coolly, "You've changed." She held his gaze. "I've grown, not changed. You refused me," he said. "I refused a life I didn't want." The silence that followed was sharp, a blade waiting to drop. Kale stepped closer. "I came to give you one chance to correct your mistake. The court is buzzing. You've embarrassed your house and mine." She lifted her chin. "I'd rather suffer the gossip than another life of misery." "You don't know what misery is," he said, voice low. "And you should be careful, Elara. You're playing a dangerous game." "No," she said, eyes like fire. "I already played that game once, and I died losing it." For a flicker of a moment, barely there, Keel's composure cracked. His brows narrowed. He studied her, like he was seeing something unfamiliar behind familiar eyes. He didn't know, couldn't know, that she remembered everything. But something in her stance, her clarity unnerved him. Kale stepped back. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," she replied softly. "I regret ever thinking you loved me." He left without another word. Elara sank into a chair after the door closed. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of standing tall. She had confronted her past, and it had blinked fast. Later that night, as the candles burned low, Rowan found her in the library. "You saw him," he said. She nodded. "He's more dangerous than I remembered." "Then you should leave now." "No," she said. "I think he's going to push harder." Rowan looked away. I should never let you face him alone. You didn't, she said gently. Every time I stood there, I remembered you. The only one who ever saw me. He looked back at her. Then really looked. Elara, he said, voice barely above a whisper, I know I have nothing compared to princes and thrones. But if I could offer you one thing, it would be a life without fear. A life where you could just be. She reached out, touched his hand. You already give me that. They stayed there, fingers entwined, while the fire cracked softly behind them. But peace never lasts long in a world ruled by crowns. That same night, a letter arrived by hawk, an urgent seal from a friend within the palace. Elara read the message and went still. What is it? Rowan asked. She looked up, voice tense. Kale isn't leaving quietly. She handed him the parchment. He's requested permission from the king to invoke the sacred binding law. He claims you gave him a verbal agreement of marriage, witnessed by your father. If granted, he can take you by royal decree. Rowan's jaw clenched. No, Elara whispered, voice shaking. I won't be his again. Then we run. Now. And this time, she didn't argue. Before the dawn broke, Elara packed what little she needed. And gold. No titles. Just memory, hope, and one quiet night at her side. As they rode through the forest path beneath the awakening sky, Elara looked back only once at the looming towers of the Dverin estate, and she smiled, not from sadness, but from freedom. She had been a puppet once, a sacrifice for political gain, but no more. This time she had chosen her own story, and that story had only just begun. Elara and Rowan rode until the stars faded and dawn painted the world in soft gold. The forest was thick and quiet, a welcome contrast to the whispers and tension that had haunted the Dverin estate. They stopped by a creek to rest the horses. Elara crouched near the water, splashing it on her face. The cold stung, but it made her feel alive. Rowan watched her from across the clearing. We should be safe here for a while. This part of the woods belongs to no one. For now, Elara said softly, glancing over her shoulder. Kale won't let it go. Rowan sat beside her. Then let him come. He'll find you're not so easy to cage anymore. She smiled faintly. He won't just come for me. He'll come for everything I might reveal. They set up camp deeper in the woods, using an abandoned hunter's cabin Rowan had once stumbled across as a boy. It was small, with a broken door and a chimney that groaned with wind, but it was theirs, and for now, it was enough. Days passed. Then a week. The forest began to feel like home. Rowan taught Elara to ride bareback, to catch fish, to navigate by stars. She had never done any of it before, never been allowed. And yet now, she laughed more freely than she had in either life. One evening, as they sat by a fire, Rowan pulled out an old, leather-bound journal. This belonged to my mother, he said. She kept records of everything, names, debts, secrets hidden beneath noble lies. He handed it to Elara. She turned the pages slowly. Names jumped out at her. Lords, merchants, and her father. Elara froze. This isn't just gossip. This is evidence. Rowan nodded. I started adding to it after she died. I thought maybe one day it'd matter. It does, she said. Because Kale didn't just manipulate me. He orchestrated my downfall with others, those who stood to gain from my silence. These people, they're connected. She stopped at a familiar name. Lord Harlem, a councilman close to Kale, had once accused her of treason in her past life. The false charges had isolated her in court, paving the way for her quiet execution. I remember this man, she whispered. He planted forged letters. I found one just before I died. Rowan leaned forward. You think Kale is planning the same again? No, Elara said. Something worse. He didn't come for love. He came to control what I knew. To silence me. And if this journal is proof of anything, it's that he's afraid. They agreed to travel at dawn to meet a contact in the city of Rivenmore, an exiled scholar and longtime critic of the crown, who might help them expose the truth. But the next morning, the world changed again. As they approached the edge of the forest, Rowan suddenly froze. Riders, Elara grabbed the reins tighter. How many? Too many. They turned and galloped back, deeper into the trees. Arrows whistled past them. One grazed Rowan's arm, tearing a line of blood across his sleeve. They reached the cabin, only to find it already surrounded. A voice called out from the woods. Elara Adverin, you are hereby commanded to surrender under royal decree. Any attempt to flee will be taken as treason. She and Rowan exchanged a look. He pulled her behind the hearth and pressed a short dagger into her hand. If they break in, you run. Take the book. Find Rivenmore. I'll hold them. No, she whispered. Not again. I won't lose you. Not in this life. He cupped her face gently. Then live for both of us. Before either could move, the door exploded inward. The next moments were chaos. Smoke. Steel. Rowan fought like a shadow, fast, silent, fierce. But they were outnumbered. Elara ducked beneath a blade, slammed the journal into her satchel, and darted out through a broken window. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The forest swallowed her. Branches tore at her sleeves. Her breath burned. Her legs ached. But she ran and ran until her body collapsed near the riverbank. She didn't know if Rowan was alive. She only knew that she had to survive for the truth. For the life they had almost built. For love. A rustle in the leaves. She turned sharply, heart thundering. But it wasn't a soldier. It was a woman in traveler's robes, her cloak dusted with herbs and dried ink. You must be Elara, the stranger said calmly. Rowan sent me. Elara blinked, dazed. Rowan's alive. He's hurt. But he bought you enough time. You need to come with me. Now. Before Kale finds you. Elara rose, gripping the satchel. Her legs shook, but her voice was steady. Take me to Rivenmore. The first war in her new life had begun. The road to Rivenmore was harsh. Elara's hands were blistered from gripping reins too long. Her eyes red from lack of sleep. But her mind, her heart, was sharpened by purpose. She clutched the satchel tighter every time her resolve flickered. Inside it, the journal throbbed like a heartbeat. A weapon without blades. The truth waiting to be used. Her guide, the woman named Lise, was quiet, alert. Her eyes missed nothing, scanning every bend of the dirt path, every rustle in the trees. Who are you, really? Elara finally asked as they passed a crumbled stone arch that once marked the border of royal lands. Lise didn't look at her. A scholar, a healer, and someone Kale tried to silence. How do you know Rowan? I don't, Lise said. But he knew me. He saved my brother years ago. He knew where to send you. Elara blinked. So he planned this. He always planned, Lise said. Just not for himself. They made it to Rivenmore by dusk on the third day. It wasn't a city, it was a haven. Built deep within the ruins of an abandoned academic stronghold, surrounded by cliffs and mist, it looked like something pulled from an old myth. Scholars, herbalists, and exiled nobles walked freely through its streets. No guards, no banners, just knowledge and rebellion. Lise led her to a quiet stone dwelling near the central fountain. You'll rest here. Tomorrow we meet with the archivist. Who's that? Elara asked. The only person alive who can take the truth you carry and make the world listen. Elara barely slept that night. Dreams of Rowan bloody, breathless, surrounded haunted her. Morning light brought worse news. He's gone, Lise said gently. The soldiers took him. They're holding him in the southern outpost on the edge of Kiel's territory, Elara's. Well tilted. No, she whispered. He wouldn't let them. He didn't, Lise said. He nearly died making sure you escaped. And now Kale knows you're alive. That you're gathering allies. He'll use Rowan as bait. Elara stood, voice hollow. Then I'll go to him. You can't. Not yet. The archivist, I don't care about titles or records. Elara snapped, her eyes burning. He saved me. I won't let Kale do to him what he did to me. Lise nodded once. Then listen. You'll meet the archivist. Today, we'll make a plan that gives you both what you want: Rowan's freedom and Keel's undoing. The archivist was not what Elara expected. He was old skin like parchment, eyes milky, but his voice rang like bells in her skull. Truth, he said, is not enough. Not in a kingdom ruled by fear. You must ignite truth like a flame and aim it where the kindling lies thickest. He studied the journal for hours in silence. Then, this is a map of rot, a chronicle of betrayal, and with your voice, it becomes fire. I don't care about thrones, Elara said. I just want to be free. I want to live and choose without fear. Then, let's make your freedom contagious, the archivist said. By nightfall, a plan had formed. They would expose the conspiracy at the King's Assembly, an annual summit held in 3 weeks' time, where lords, merchants and foreign envoys gathered in the capital. The entire kingdom would be watching. To do that, they needed 3 things: a royal warrant to enter the summit, a living witness to Keel's crimes, and the original letters forged to frame Elara in her first life. One of those witnesses was Rowan. Elara gripped the edge of the map they laid before her. Then I go south, she said. I get him back. The archivist didn't object. But you'll need more than heart and hope. Lise handed her a small scroll. A contact. An infiltrator working inside the southern outpost. She'll get you in. Elara left Rivenmore. At first light, this time not as a girl fleeing fate, but a woman charging toward it. 3 days later, she arrived at the edge of enemy territory. Dressed in the robes of a traveling merchant, she slipped through the outer checkpoint undetected. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the fieldstone outpost ahead. She waited behind a hay cart as instructed. Then, a sharp whistle, a cloaked figure appeared from behind the stable. Young, dark-eyed, quick. Elara Dverin, she whispered. Yes, I'm Sira. I'm here for him. They moved swiftly through the underground water channel that led beneath the outer walls. Mold, rats, and cold stone followed them, but Elara didn't care. Till last, they reached a barred cell. Torches flickered. Rowan sat in the corner, bloodied, bruised, but alive. He looked up as the grate opened, and for a long moment, disbelief passed between them like breath. Elara, he whispered. She ran to him, kneeling. I thought I'm here, she said, and I'm not leaving without you. He smiled even through pain. You're terrible at staying away from danger, and you're terrible at staying alive, she answered. Taz finally breaking free. They left under the cover of storm clouds. Keel's men wouldn't discover the broken lock until dawn. But by then, Elara and Rowan were already riding back toward the truth with evidence in one hand and each other in the other. The capital of Varma had never looked more hollow. Elara stood beneath its towering gates as dawn light painted its golden spires, and the banners of every great house fluttered in anticipation of the assembly. But the streets below told another story. Whispers crawled like smoke through the crowds. Of rebellion, of scandal, of a noblewoman reborn from fire. The girl who had once entered this city as a bride-to-be was gone. In her place stood a woman with battle in her heart and truth clenched in her fist. Beside her, Rowan rode silently, still weak from his wounds but unbreakable in spirit. Every step of the journey back had stitched them closer, pain into trust, memory into bond. They entered the estate of House Tyrell, Rivenmoor's only remaining ally within the capital walls. There, in a chamber lit by gold-trimmed windows, Elara unrolled the journal and placed it on the table before Lady Tyrell, an aging nobleman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "These are the records," Elara said. "Everything we need to bury Kale." Lady Tyrell skimmed the names, her brow arching higher with every line. "This is treason," she said, though not unkindly. "No," Elara replied. "What Kale did was treason. This is justice." She looked to Rowan, who placed a sealed envelope on the table. Inside was Kale's forged letter from years ago, the one that had sentenced Elara to death in her first life, recovered from the southern outpost during their escape. "The king will not ignore this," Lady Tyrell said. "He might try," Elara answered, "but the assembly won't." The day of the royal assembly arrived like a storm. Nobles, merchants, and foreign dignitaries gathered within the grand rotunda, a marble colosseum at the heart of the palace, where the kingdom's laws were shaped. Elara entered through the east gate, flanked by Lady Tyrell and Rowan. Every eye turned to her, some narrowed in disbelief, others widened in recognition, and just one burned with silent rage. Kale. He sat near the throne dais, clad in obsidian once more, a serpent carved into the hilt of his ceremonial sword. When their eyes met, the room went still. "She didn't look away," the herald's voice boomed. "Lady Elara Verin has petitioned the assembly to speak." Gasps, murmurs. One noble actually dropped a goblet. The king, aged, grey, absent from most decisions in recent years, raised a hand. "Let her speak." Elara stepped into the center of the circle. "I stand before you today, not as a noble's daughter or a prince's discarded bride," she began. "I stand as a survivor of a truth you were never meant to hear." She opened the journal. Names spilled like venom, bribes, silenced witnesses, rigged trials. She held up the forged letter. "This was used to accuse me of treason in a life I barely escaped. But I am not alone in what I suffered. Others have vanished. Others have died." Kale rose. "This is madness. She lies to save herself." Rowan stepped forward, his voice clear. "I saw the letter. I found the evidence. I bled for it." The hall erupted in voices. Kale stepped down from the dais, fury in his eyes. "You'll destroy your own house for what? A stable boy's affection?" Elara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "No, I'll destroy your illusion of power for every girl who thought she had no choice." The king raised his staff. "Enough." He turned to Kale. "Do you deny the charges?" Kale didn't speak, but his silence said more than words could. From the corner of the room, the archivist stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I am witness to the validity of these claims, and I believe the crown has been compromised." Chaos unfurled. Guards surrounded Kale. He resisted. A sword flashed. Rowan stepped in, disarmed him, pinned him, just as he had trained for years to do, not for war, but for this moment. Kale was dragged from the hall in disgrace. Later, Elara stood in the palace gardens, staring up at the statue of the first queen, a woman who had forged peace in a time of fire. Rowan approached quietly. "You won," he said. "No," she replied. "We all did." She turned to face him. "You were always the one who saw me," she whispered. "I always will." He leaned forward then, unsure, hesitant. But this time Elara closed the distance. The kiss was not explosive, not fiery. It was quiet, real, a promise whispered between two hearts that had survived everything. Weeks passed. Kale was stripped of title, exiled beyond the borders. New reforms swept through the court, and Elara, finally free, finally whole, did not return to her family's estate. Instead, she and Rowan built something of their own on the edge of the valley where wildflowers grew and no one bowed to crowns. One morning, she stepped outside and saw him repairing a garden fence. She smiled, because this life, this quiet, golden, ordinary life, was the one she had fought for, the one she had chosen. There was a stillness now, not the cold silence of regret she had once known, but the kind that only came after a storm had passed. When the skies finally cleared and the soul exhaled, Elara stood at the edge of the flower field, her fingers brushing the tall golden stalks that swayed in the early autumn wind. The valley below was alive with color blues, golds, deep crimson. And behind her, a cottage stood where a castle once haunted her dreams. She turned as Rowan stepped out onto the porch, wiping dirt from his hands. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she replied with a small smile. "I was thinking about," she looked at him for a long moment, "about how it took dying to learn how to live." He crossed to her and took her hand. "You were always alive," he said. "You just weren't free." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I still have nightmares," she whispered, "of the old life, of what they did. Sometimes I wake up, and I forget for a second that I'm here, that I'm not back there." Rowan wrapped his arms around her. "Then I'll remind you, every morning, as many times as it takes." That evening, as the stars blinked awake, Elara sat by the fire, her journal in her lap. Not the old one, the new one. Its pages were still mostly empty, but on the first page, she had written, "I was born a daughter of power, raised to obey, and married to a crown I thought I wanted. But only in losing everything did I find the strength to take it all back. This time, I write my story. This time, I choose." She paused, then turned the page. She began to write not of politics or power, but of little things. How Rowan always burned the bread. How the sun fell just right on the river at dawn. How love, when it was true, didn't roar but rooted. It was not the story of a queen. It was the story of a woman who came back to life because someone loved her enough to believe she could. Word of her courage had spread beyond the capital. Other women wrote letters. Travelers stopped by the cottage just to see her. Some brought books. Some brought questions. Some brought thanks. And slowly, her quiet home became something more, a place of learning, of healing, of rebellion, transformed into rebirth. She never sought power again, but somehow she had more of it than ever. One evening, years later, a little girl ran through the garden paths barefoot, wild-haired, laughing. Rowan called after her, shaking his head. Elara stood on the porch, watching them, a smile tugging at her lips. The girl stopped in front of her. "Mama," she asked, "why do you always write in that big old book?" Elara crouched, placing her hand over her daughter's heart. "Because I want you to remember something." "What?" "That even if the world tells you who to be, your heart will always know the truth. And when it does, listen." The child looked at her, eyes wide. "Did you listen?" "I did," Elara said. "It just took me a while." That night, Elara wrote one final line in the back of the journal. "In my first life, I was quiet. In my second, I was loud. But in this one, I am simply free." She closed the book and kissed Rowan goodnight, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, she slept without dreams. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love so that we could understand you were with us till the end, as well as please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.